I launched an app. Let me take you through that step by step. Things that I learned, things that I think you should focus on, things that I think you shouldn't focus on so much. So here's how. In the beginning of this year, I decided to embark on this journey of building an iOS app, and I can proudly declare I've done it. It is live, it is in the App Store, you can search for it, you can look it up, you can test, you can see, you can download it. It's available in all the countries, so if you're feeling like giving it a go, please do. Let's get a few things out of the way first. I am a developer, but I do websites. I don't do apps. I never work with apps. I never looked at apps code. I never maintained an app. I have zero idea about apps. So all of this thing was very new to me. Obviously, you need to code the app, but I want to focus on the other processes that are involved around releasing an app. So buckle up and let's go. Let's start with the idea. So I'm a web developer. I'm employed as a web developer, and at work we have the prospect of launching a product that is going to be an app. Essentially, that meant we need to start getting into the flow of building an app, learning anything that is related to it. That meant that even if you don't have the coding knowledge, how to get them is by building something. Now, how do you decide what to build? For me, it was quite straightforward. I already have like a tiny little project that I built as a web page. I'm based in Germany and I'm applying for the German citizenship. Well, I have applied ages ago. It just takes them too long to process that application. In order to apply for the citizenship initially, you have to pass a test called Einbürgerungstest, citizenship test. There are 300 questions that you need to prepare for. The best way how I wanted to prepare is just like to have them all in a shuffled order, just go through them again and again and again and again until I get all of them right. Back in the day when I was applying, which was like almost 2 years ago, actually more than 2 years ago, I did the test. I didn't find any tool online that was doing that. And that's why I did my little web page for that. It's very simple. It's just one thing. And I thought that this is a great thing that I can build as an app and practice Swift skills, iOS development. Because I already had the idea, it meant that I can move to the next phase, which is competitive research and market fit. So when it comes to the market fit, I kind of know that it was a good fit because it's a test that you need to take in order to become a citizen in Germany. There's no other way around it. That means that there is a demand. People will be looking for resources. So I knew that the market fit is there. Plus, we're getting a reform of the law about the citizenships here, which means that there's going to be a massive influx of people applying for citizenships now and kind of like trying to ride the wave here. Now, when it comes to competitive research, you need to find who your competitors are, what they have, what they don't have, where you can bring your features, to the next level, see what's your competitive advantage as well. So as I mentioned, when I was looking for such tool, I didn't find it. That's why I built my own as a web page. But I didn't look into the App Store. So that was the point where I actually opened the App Store and started searching for apps to see what they can offer. In the Apple Store, things looked quite grim. I'll be honest with you. There was one app that was very top ranking. I think it still is. It's very appealing. It has a lot of downloads, I think, because it has a lot of reviews. Reviews are good, but part of the competitive research analysis is for you to go and see what maybe they don't have. And you can see that in the comments, the feedback that people leave, something that they want to get improved or whatever it is. Also, you can just download the app and feel for yourself and see if there is anything that you would do different. Even though like all the apps are quizzes and they're quite straightforward, but there are still things that you can do better than somebody else or things that you can offer that they don't want to offer or they didn't focus on offering. And when it comes to the other apps, it was really not that great. A lot of them looked, maybe people just build it for themselves, but then I wouldn't know why you would release it to an app store. It just didn't look appealing. I would not download that app. It would look to me like something shady is happening. I think nowadays in our modern era, if you have an app that doesn't look modern, doesn't look a little bit stylish, it gives an ick vibe. It gives a vibe almost like of a danger. Why would I download this? This doesn't look like a person who knows what they're doing. What other things they're compromising that is gonna cost me? That's where my mind goes. I don't know if your mind goes there, and I don't know if I have unlocked the fear of yours right now. It's just worth to be cautious. That said, that also doesn't mean that if anything is packaged pretty, they took extra care of that. But you know what I'm saying, right? You know where I'm going with it. The next phase is the design research. I went to the App Store. I've downloaded several apps. I started going through them. I wanted to understand the flow. As I've never built an app, I wanted to understand how it works. What do the users expect? Just like a general rule of thumb, don't invent anything new. Just use something that the users are already familiar with. There is like the muscle memory. There is the UX that everybody's already familiar with. Just go with that, unless you're Apple. So during my design research phase, I was trying to understand what they do good, what they do not so good. I also downloaded several regular quiz apps in order to see what they do, because I wanted to make it a little bit more playful rather than, the fax machine thing. That's what I was focusing in the design research phase. There is this much you can research, and at some point you need to start doing stuff. The next phase is the MVP MVP phase, the minimum viable product. This is the most important thing. Don't skip this. You shouldn't skip any other phase, but if you need to skip a phase, you do not skip this phase. You just do not. Defining the minimum viable product is basically a stage where you're going to take, you probably have ideas what you want to create. You probably have big plans for your product. You want to create something awesome. You want to do this and this and this and this and this, but time is ticking. You know, my time was definitely ticking. The law is about to be approved. The influx of people is going to go in, and I needed to ride that wave. Even if you don't need to ride a wave, you still need to release as soon as possible and get feedback from your users. Kind of like release before you're ready. You might have heard of that. However, you should not compromise on essential features. So what minimum viable product means, what is the absolute basic feature set that your app will work with and will deliver what you're promising and give the user what they need in a very basic way that will not compromise the functionality or the expectations of the user or anything of that kind. What is that for you? For me, that was definitely, I actually underestimated that, but initially for me was just get all the questions, all the 300 questions, shuffle them and let the user have an interface where they can practice them and go through them and just test their knowledge or get to know the questions. That was my minimum viable product. Spoiler alert, I went a little bit further because after I double checked with the competitors, I saw that releasing an app like that would actually not do much. So I had to match the features that they have in terms of a quiz. So I ended up doing the shuffling is still my main feature and my top thing. Then I also offer categories. I just went overboard there, but the minimum viable product had to be the test because people want to download an app to have a test simulation and also practice for the test, which meant that I need to offer regional questions, I need to offer all the questions, the general pool, and I need to offer a test simulation. So that became my minimum viable product. And then I added in between also categories because I already had that. And because after all, I was still learning app development, so I was curious about how does this thing work. But as soon as I got that, and also regarding the design, I initially, it was very ugly. I'll show you here. It was the most basic. And honestly, in the beginning, I thought like that will work for whatever I wanted, like for the very, I would even call it -1 MVP, not 1.0 MVP. But no, then it became this and I'm way happier with that. But that also took a moment. I had to go through that. I had to see how it works. I had to be unsatisfied with it and only then just sat down one Saturday, did some mock-ups, chose some colors, and I think it looks nice. So because of all this process, defining the MVP, then extending the MVP, because I realized that that's just not gonna fly, having one design and then redoing the design to be something nicer, because otherwise I was not doing better than the fax ones, okay? I had to do better. So after that was kind of sort of in place, it was time to go to the Apple realm. Okay, so in the Apple realm, what's actually like the boom, 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 boom that we need to do? So first would be code the app. I know, it's straightforward, but it needs to be there. Or you code it or somebody else code it. I bought a few courses in the beginning and most of them just did like hello world, output a text, just get a feel for it. Apple offers their own code editor. Many people call it code editor on steroids. It's called Xcode. It is an amazing tool. I highly suggest you not to sleep on that one. You will need it in one phase or another. So even if you develop in your favorite Visual Studio Code or Vim or whatever, don't. Just take the painful way from the very beginning and then it's gonna get easier. Xcode is quite an amazing tool. You have a lot of things that you can do there. iOS developers are quite spoiled in that regard, in comparing to web developers at least. You can code on one side and then on the other side you actually have a preview of what you're coding, which is amazing, saves you so much time, saves you so much hassle. Love it. Use Swift UI. It's an amazing framework. It gives you a lot of things out of the box. Seriously, if your app is uncomplicated, I think mine is really uncomplicated. It's quite simple. It's such a smooth ride developing it. Once you code the app, you also should in parallel test the app. You can do that by the screen that you're coding when you do it like side by side, or you can also test it in the simulator that Xcode also offers you on your machine, which I believe should be a macOS machine. And of course, once you're ready, you can also send it to your real device and test it here, which I highly recommend. For example, I now have haptics, which is like this vibrations when you tap on things. There is no way you can test that not on a physical device, on an actual physical device. So I would highly recommend to do that, or just don't do haptics. I guess, I don't know. Once you're sort of ready and you think that you're done with your MVP, it looks nice, don't go for perfection, just go for Store. It works, it looks good, the users will get it, they know how to use it. Just get it out there, just get the feedback loop going on as soon as you can. So once you're there, you should actually find people that are gonna test stuff for you as well, because you as a person who is creating the app, who has the ideas for the app, you have one vision for it or several visions for it, but you will never test it as other users are testing it. So I highly recommend you to find some people, friends, family, maybe in some forums. There are like a lot of enthusiasts that are willing to help you test things. But in order to do that, we need to go to the next step, which is the Apple world, the whole process of how you do things. All right, so in order to release any app on Apple's App Store, you have to have an Apple developer account. Apple developer account means having Apple developer membership. This thing costs money. It's 99 euros a year, I think, or 100 euros, so like between 98 and 100 euros a year. One point, don't get it as soon as you decide to do an app. Get that membership, delay it as much as possible, because what if it takes you 9 months to build an app? You don't need the membership while you're developing the app. You just need it once you're about to start the process of releasing it. So delay the membership, don't pay for something that you're not using. That's just a tip. To get the membership, I think you go to developer.apple.com, and then, everything's straightforward there. You kind of like do the stuff there with Apple. It takes a little bit of a while to get it. So you need to register with your real name, with all the real details. Then you need to send a few documents. Then they review your request to become an Apple developer, part of their community, part of their whole thing. I think within 24 hours I got approved, but then within 48 hours, so it took me longer, when I started actually seeing and getting access to all the things in my admin page, sort of. So account for that, it also takes a moment. Once you get that, you need to kind of like connect the stuff. I'm not going to go into detail into that because there's a lot of information out there and it also always changes. So we were talking about giving other users to test your app. Now, how you can do that is through using a thing called test flight, because when you have an app that you still didn't release on App Store, how else would your users find it? Apple gives you this tool called test flight that you can have on your phone, you can have on your machine. That's basically where you get test apps. You as an admin, you need to add your testers. There's like a panel for testers and users where you add them. There are two groups, internal testers and external testers. Now, initially I started adding people into my internal testers. I added my husband, then I added my boss and two colleagues. But then one of my colleagues mentioned that when he got the email, he saw that he gets access to like a lot of things. I'm still the admin, but they're getting way too much insights and access into places they don't need to have. So that was a very good point. And I just kept my husband in as an internal tester, but everybody else is now external testers. So that's also a thing. You can just like add them in a separate group. In my case, the separation was not really needed because all the people that have volunteered to test my app are fine as internal testers and external testers, just apart from this whole thing that they have less access into my admin panel. I think it should work as first you release for internal testing. Maybe that's like really core developers. Then you go to external testing, and that's when maybe you also have already users who are maybe not developers who can test things out. You go through Xcode archive, and then you need to build the app. It builds it for you. It checks some stuff. If it's missing something, it's gonna reject it and tell you that you need to fix something. Then you click on distribute app, release to internal testing, and then release to external testing, and so on and so forth. So it's quite straightforward once you know where to click. Also, another thing about like internal external testers or internal testers, once you release it, they get their stuff in test flight, and it's super helpful because they can leave you feedback straight away there with like screenshots and saying things and pointing out features. So it's extremely helpful. And when you think about it, Apple actually went a long way in order to make all of these things, all of those programs, all of those tools for us as developers, for people as testers, in order to make this thing as smooth as possible. So I know 100 euros sounds like a lot, but it's actually, you understand why it happens. We can argue about that in the comments, but test flight is a very good tool as well. I really suggest you use it because it's really helpful and users can test it on their physical devices, which that's actually what your potential users, your customers are going to be doing. So let's say you're done with testing the app. Let's say everything works, or maybe if not everything works, but you are ready to submit the app to the App Store. There are a lot of things that Apple is asking from you in order to you to be eligible to submit an app, and it's a lot. First, there are always some legal things that, you're going to get like pop-ups or notifications that, hey, you need to submit this, hey, you need to approve this, hey, you need to accept this, blah, 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 blah. All of that you have to do. There's no other way. Then when it comes to the app, you need to have obviously the name, you need to decide which keywords you want to use, you need to go for descriptions, screenshots, and honestly, this took me the longest. You know how I mentioned that I want to make the app very appealing, very nice, so the user sees it and makes them trust it or makes them want to download it. I believe that screenshots are super, super, super essential in that regard. And it took me a while to create the screenshots. There's a lot of requirements. You need 2 different sizes. I also have 2 languages that I offer the app in. So I had to do 4 sets of screenshots. It took a moment, so just account for that it takes a while. Apple then also asks you to have a website. It's optional to have a promotional website and a marketing website, but it's a must to have a privacy policy website. Basically, you need to have somewhere where you define what's the privacy of your app, how you're using the data, how to opt in, opt out, and so on and so forth. There's like a lot of online tools where you can pre-generate it after answering some questions. My app is super simple. I'm not asking for any data. I'm not collecting any data. It was really straightforward. I just had to generate it and put it on a website and give Apple the link to it. Now, once you have all of that, there is a button that is going to become available to you, submit for review or something like this. You click that, and then don't forget on the next screen, as of now, to also click submit for review or something like this, because I once forgot. And I was like, why do I not get any emails? Don't forget about that. So what happens after you click that button? As far as I know, there are 4 stages, or at least those are the 4 stages that I have been through. First one is ready for review. I think ready for review is exactly like this phase between me clicking the button and forgetting to click the next button. That's kind of like ready for review. I don't know, maybe in some different companies or setups, there are different people doing that. I don't know, but that's a phase. Then once you click on the second button, you are in the waiting for review phase, which means that your app is waiting for somebody in Apple to take the app and look through it. I don't know exactly what they're looking through. Probably looking through the code for sure. Definitely looking through like the fields that you filled out. Apple is very strict. It's quite common to get like a feedback from Apple that they reject your submission and you need to change things and then you can resubmit again. I don't think there is a limit for this submission resubmission thing, so you can just like do it. It's just a little bit annoying, but that's the process. When your app is being picked up, you get an email that your app is in review. My whole process was quite simple. My app is very simple. They check the code, I guess, see that I'm not doing anything fishy. I'm not using anything of the Apple stuff. Like I'm never asking a user for any information. I don't use location, camera stuff, or anything of the features. It's just like data that I put in the app that the user downloads and interacts with. That's it. After the app has gone through review, if it is successful, then you are ready to distribute and your app is in ready for distribution phase. Now, when it comes to ready for distribution, before you submitted the app, at the very bottom, there were 3 options that define what happens with your app after it's ready for distribution. So you have the option to, just get a notification that it's ready for distribution and then you manually distribute it. Like you click on like, okay, now distribute. Second option, which I always have, is just automatically release it to the App Store. As soon as you approve it, just release it. I don't care when it is. I'm not tied to any deadlines or promotional timing or anything of that kind. As soon as you have it, go for it. Or there is another one, the third option, where you can automatically release it, but not before a specific date. When it comes to the timing that it took me to go from one phase to another, let me say, I also heard that the first time you go through review process is the longest. I don't know. I think it also depends where you're submitting the app. So for example, if I'm in Germany, I assume that there is a local team looking into the app. I don't think that it's like a team in the US. I don't know, I might be wrong, but from the experience that I got, how my app is being picked up and when it becomes in review or changes status, I think it's a local team, because when I did it once at midnight, it was not working through the night. Got picked up like at 11 a.m. So that's my assumption, but I don't know. Maybe let me know. Once it got into review, apart from that one time when I submitted it at midnight, I waited usually between 1 to 5 hours in order for the app to be picked up and be in the review stage. Once it was in the review stage, I think it was about 2-3 hours maybe tops. Again, my app is very simple. There is nothing, and I assume that once you resubmit a new version, they're just like checking the fields that were changed. Also, for example, I changed the website domain, the app's name, and I noticed that took a little bit longer then, because you get notified that, okay, this field was changed. You need to double check that one. But if you don't change the fields and you just change the code, then I guess could go faster in that regard, unless your code got way bigger. After it was approved, distribution went straight away into the App Store and it got released. All in all, the whole review part, it has not taken me as of yet longer than 12 hours, which I think is quite decent actually. One thing that you need to keep in mind is that, as I said, if you change some fields, then, they get notified about it, they need to recheck them, which means that once you submit an app, even though you see the fields are locked. You cannot change anything in them. If you want to change them, you need to submit a new build for the app and you need to go through all the process again. That's why you need to be very strategic about your timing, about your changes. There is this thing in development where you have sprints, which means basically that a development process goes through 2 weeks spans, and at the end of every 2 weeks, you submit an app or you submit a feature and that gets reviewed and then that gets distributed. Not every user has their updates on for every apps. You might be pushing every day a new update. Your user needs to go to the App Store and click on manually update the app. That's a little bit funky, right? However, if you do it every 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks or so, you could maybe send them like a push notification saying like, hey, a new app version is available. Go to your App Store and download it or update it. And that will be like less annoying to the user as well. So keep that in mind from the user's perspective. Then for you as a developer as well, if you have a feature that you want to work on that feature. Gather like a list of bugs that you need to work on as well. Don't straight away release unless it's a critical bug, of course. But if it's like a typo here and there, or some color change, or this change, just bundle all of those changes together and release them all at once. Because I don't think it makes sense to go through this approval process several times a week when you can really be strategic, plan it all, and then just like release it. Because you also want to test it every time before you release stuff. Just because it's like such a lengthy process, plan ahead, think what you need to change, keep that in mind that it takes a while. Which is also, because it takes a while, I will highly recommend you just build something very simple, like your MVP, go with it in order to understand everything and see how it works and see what's required from you, because it is a lot, especially if you compare it to web dev. Web dev, we just write a line of code, we push it, and it's out there live. It's actually pretty wild when you think about it and when you compare the two. But anyway, this is how the Apple thing works. This is how you go from ideation, MVP, market fit, competitive research, design research, the Apple process, the review of all of that, and everything that is involved with Apple, which takes a lot of time. It's quite demanding, as I said, comparing to web dev, but in the long run, I think it makes a lot of things easier because Apple thought it through. It's just that you need to prepare a lot of things in advance. Usually as a web dev, you don't necessarily do that. You know, you can just figure things out as you go. In Apple, it doesn't look like it works like that. So what are the next steps now? Actually, once I released the app and I shared it on my social media, I got a lot of support. Thank you so much. The app ranked number 16 in the education top chart category, which is like freaking insane, but so cool. I'm very curious about how to continue developing this app. I'm gonna add more languages. I have now the app in English and in German because I want to focus on you actually learning how to integrate in Germany, about the laws, about the rules, about everything, rather than just being intimidated by the long German words and not understanding the questions. So I added sounds, I added haptics. It's now officially in MVP 2 and I'm working on MVP 3. Gonna be adding more languages. I think next one is gonna be Spanish for sure, maybe a Russian or Ukrainian, or maybe both. Thinking about also adding Turkish maybe. Arabic would be a great help, but Arabic, it needs to be from right to left. That would be another new challenge to figure out how to do that in the app so everything kind of like works cohesively. Totally up for it. I already have all the questions translated. I do need testers. So if you are a native speaker of any of those languages, or if you have a language that you might want to see in that app, then please do let me know. I'm very happily will accept any offers and any help that you might want to suggest. And if you've ever enjoyed any of my coding stuff or any of my videos and ever thought how to support me, then I would really appreciate if you can go to the App Store, download the app, check it out, and leave a review. That would mean a lot to me and I would really appreciate that. And I'm planning on continuing working on this app, marketing it. That's another thing that I'm excited about, seeing how the whole marketing product perspective thing work, because I always am behind like more like the developer seat, but now I have more opportunities to also dive into the other aspects. So I'm super excited. I'm very interested to see how it goes, how it grows, how many people are using it, how people are using it, are they enjoying it? And yeah, if you can offer any feedback, that would be a great thing for me. So looking forward to hearing that. If you have any questions, then please leave them in the comments and I'm always up for a chat. And also let me know if you're interested in more of like the techie part of this video, maybe like how Swift UI and all of that works, with a little bit more of a walkthrough and a little bit more diving into that. Here I wanted to focus just more on the other steps. So yeah, appreciate you taking the time and watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it and I see you in the next one. Bye!